Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Cut Through the Noise. Cut Through the Noise is the podcast that helps business leaders increase sales through clearer, smarter communications that elevates your brand. I'm Aisling O'Rourke, founder of The Communications Coach, and you are listening to series 13 of the podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, you are most welcome. If you've been listening to us since day one, thank you as always for your support. It is very much appreciated. And if you're looking for something to listen to, remember we're live on YouTube and on LinkedIn now. Each week, the video gets posted live on our social media platforms so you can watch us in full 4K colour. And I hope you are enjoying that too. Now, this season, we are focusing in once again on AI because it is a topic that it's not going anywhere. It's still incredibly important from a communications perspective, but it's evolving and evolving rapidly, and that can lead to overwhelm. So that's why this entire season's umbrella theme is AI without the overwhelm. Now, last week, I talked about the importance of setting the foundations, doing the groundwork, doing an audit of all your repetitive tasks so that you can then figure out what AI can help you with. Too often, people focus in on, what platform am I going to subscribe to, as opposed to what problem am I looking to solve. So today, we're getting really practical, and I'm delighted to be joined by Roisin Bennett of the AI team to focus in on creating workflows and establishing some agents for yourself. Every now and then, we hold some content back for our dedicated subscribers on YouTube so that we have a way of thanking you for tuning in to us on YouTube and having some bonus content for you. So this week I spoke to Roisin about her top tip about using AI agents, and really just getting started with it all. Roisin Bennett of the AI team, you are very welcome to Cut Through the Noise.
I'm delighted to be here, and thanks for having me, Aisling. I love to talk about this subject because it's so important for small business.
It is indeed. And I think there's so much conversation around it, Roisin, at the moment, that it's fair to say that it can be, particularly for small businesses who don't have a massive marketing team, it can all feel a bit overwhelming, can't it?
It absolutely can, yes. And I think, like we were just speaking, it's been overwhelming for everybody because it has moved so fast. And it's gone through different stages over the last 2 years, from just being a chatbot, or a platform you ask questions to and got an answer, and people were largely using it like a Google search. But it's really only a tiny part of what AI is capable of doing. We've moved to from stage two, where we're able to connect our apps with inside an AI model, so it can, we can build workflows, and it can, do certain things, say note takers. It can do certain things for us. And now we've moved to the third stage, which we're in now, and that's developing very, very fast. And that's the whole agentic era, and the year of agents. 2026 is going to be the year of agents. So what is an agent?
The thing with AI, like many advances in technology in particular, it can feel very exclusionary when we start talking in jargon, because if it's not your
Yes.
day to day and you don't know what the jargon is, people can get a bit too embarrassed to even ask the question. So first things first, can you explain to me what a workflow is and then what an agent is?
Yeah, I think what a workflow is, as I said, stage two, the connectors, the possibility to connect tools with inside, we'll say an AI platform, allowed us to create workflows. So tools like Zapier or Make, I know these are technical things, but they let AI sit inside your workflow, so that, for instance, you could classify your emails, you could link it to your CRM, you could summarize notes, you could move data between, we'll say, between apps. So it was very helpful to create workflows that you could give it instructions or set it up to do things for you. So you could automate and certain parts of your
Yeah.
day-to-day work.
And like
Very, very,
really
very, very useful.
simple things. It didn't have to be like really sexy, convoluted things. Like one of the simplest
No.
ones that I do in my day to day when I'm on calls with my clients, I use Google Meet. Google's AI Gemini, in inverted commas, listens to the meeting. It transcribes the meeting, but it digests them down into notes for my client and action points for
Exactly.
them. But then I have that
Exactly.
connected to Google Tasks. So Gemini
Yes.
will tell Google Tasks the actions that I've agreed to take on behalf of the client, or that it's maybe resources I'm going to generate for the client. And it automatically goes into my Google Tasks as a to-do list item. Like it can be really simple things like that, can't it?
Yeah, and it is, and it's best to start with the simple things. The important thing, actually, for using any AI at the very beginning, how do we get AI ready? It's to actually document those regular day-to-day tasks. Like any client that I would speak to, there's always a 2 week lead in to ever using an AI tool, and that's documenting the day-to-day workflows and the day-to-day processes and businesses. So anywhere where there's a repetitive task or something you do daily, and that it's that AI can do that for you now. So it's first of all documenting your processes and how you do work, and mapping it out, and that's the work up front. But anything that's repetitive like that, it's AI can do it
And it
for you
makes
with a simple workflow. And I think when people see the time saving, the advantages, and like you say, the note takers, I mean, they're a must have. And they're a huge time saver. And they're probably one of the best, most impactful ways to see how it works, or build it into a workflow at the beginning, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of the easiest ways to start. That if you have online meetings regularly, connecting a note taking tool just to understand what these things are capable for. Because, like,
Yes.
be honest, we've all been at important meetings and taken copious notes. But actually, if we don't create action points on the basis of that, when do we
Yes.
ever go back and read through a full transcript or even attend a conference and hear, God, that's a great idea. I must do that. But then it sits in the notebook for months on end. Like these AI tools can help us be so much more creative and productive in our day to day. Now, Roisin,
Absolutely.
you mentioned agents and agentic AI and 2026 being the year of the AI agent. So, what is an AI agent?
So it's people describe it in different ways, but essentially an agent, in what it can do for you is you give it a goal. So you give it an outcome, and very broadly, it figures out the steps, and it uses the tools that you're going to set it up on. It checks its work, and it delivers a finished result.
Okay.
So an agent is a system that takes a goal, and it can make decisions, and it can move it forward to a result. So it takes an action for you. Um, I suppose under the hood, every agent will say what we're calling an agent. It is a system, but there are four parts to an agent. You have your brain, which sits on your large learning model. So maybe Claude or ChatGPT. So that's the brain.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to sit on. Then you have your engine. These are your the loop will say that keeps working until it's finished. That's the instructions. Then you have tools like we talked about the connectors. You're using your connectors to connect your CRMs, your Notion, your other tools, your apps.
Okay, so like say you could, for example, connect Claude to your Google Drive. Like I know there's thousands of us who we have maybe a couple of tens of thousands of photographs in our Google Drive folder that don't really have any kind of
Yes.
organization. You could, for example, connect Claude to your Google Drive and have it organize all of that for you.
Exactly, exactly. And then the fourth part is context. You're setting it up with your brand details, with your guidelines, with your standard operating processes. So that's that's what's exciting. I find when you're building agents, you're building in your all of your context and your processes and your data and your brand. So it only acts, takes actions with your information and your context.
Right. So that might be maybe in my case samples of my writing, my brand colors, my logos, that kind of detail.
Yes, exactly. So the more context, we used to talk about prompting, and now it's more about context engineering. And the more context you give it, the better. And the within, we'll say the likes of your listeners will be familiar with Claude as a large learning model. You're setting up your agent, and you instruct it with skills. So these are documents that are written out in describing your processes, describing your content. So when you set it up you're setting it up. You don't have to repeat all of this information every time you ask it to take an action. It has all of your context.
So then how would you go and set up an agent? Talk us through the process.
Before you set up an agent, you first of all have to set out what is your goal. What is it you want this agent to do? What is it you want help with? And I said, as you go back to the beginning and you set out what your it might be a repetitive task, or it might be content creation, we'll say. I think we all need to look at content creation for our AI visibility now is becoming increasingly important. So having a good content plan is so important. So you could set up your content agent within one of the large learning models. So you're writing down what is the goal of this content agent. Is it to write? Is it to gather information and write information for my LinkedIn profile, for instance? So you give it a role, and so this is my content lead. You list the actions you want it to take. You're setting out these actions, as I said, in their document format, their skills documents. And you can ask it to search, to do a search function for you, would say, in a different topic, to research and to draft posts, for instance. You feed it your context. Your context is it's always working from your context, your brand guidelines. You give it examples of your work. You give it constraints as well. Is here at this point you set your guardrails as well, as that you're giving it instructions of what not to do.
Okay.
You train it how to sound like you, only in your voice. What I would always do is, you're setting up an agent. There's always human in the loop. So but it is possible to set it up that it will do 80% of the work for you. And then you have a human in the loop to cross check and to put the final touches into it. But it gives the ability to do all of that. The time it would take to do all of that research, the drafting, it's almost, it's set up and it's working on repeat, and it's set up that it's working continuously for you. So this is the type of, for small businesses and for solopreneurs, and this content creation and posting is so time consuming, and it's always a big challenge for businesses, to keep it, because when you have a content plan or a strategy online, consistency is key.
Absolutely.
uh,
And I
yeah.
think many people resonate with that. Like, like a lot of us, we start off with great plans, but actually the implementation of those plans is what we fall down on. So having an agent set up to adhere to this content plan for us to create the content that we then check and view before posting. Now, I know, what's your take on that? Because I know the capability is there that we could connect it to, say, my LinkedIn or my Instagram and let it post for me. That's not something I'm personally comfortable with, but I understand the temptation. I always want to double check just in case.
Yes, I think that's important. I mean, when we talk about creating the loop, when we're setting up the agent, it's always signed off by a human, and that's really important to keep, because there's a lot of talk about content slop or AI slop.
Mhm.
It's very easy to create content that looks great now. I mean, we can produce our fantastic carousels and through Notebook LM or Canva. They can all look, but it's all going to look very much the same and AI generated. So I think we need to be more creative and more human. And what's really working now, we'll say on LinkedIn, or I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. It's the human story. It's where there's been human input or case studies, or where you've actually you've an experience, or you're showing your expertise in a certain in a certain area. Because it's like I've been kind of constant on LinkedIn for the last 2 years, and I've just seen it go through stages. Now, the types of I used to particularly focus on carousels, and they were helpful guides. They were always giving a bit of value, and now they're just so easy to produce, and there's so much of it that you need to I think you need to stand out a bit more and make it more relatable to businesses. And I think that's a plan that I'm planning to build in public, actually, with the AI team, and show how things done, on a human level, how it relates to businesses, how they can actually do it. Because, as you said, there's so much information. Like, for all of the large learning models, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, they have fantastic resources, training resources, for that are free to use. But there's just so much
That's
that it becomes hard to take it. But where would you start? So I try to break it down into, like, really relatable. This is where you start. This is how you go, through each stage, and just make it really, really practical, because I think it's there's just too much information right now.
100%. Talking about agents, we focused in on an agent that might create content for us. But if we're creating agents, should we be like very specific? And that's my content agent. And if I needed to do something else, like research or data analytics, for example, that, like, I don't necessarily have the budget to go and hire a market researcher.
Yes.
Do I need to then create a separate agents? Do we need to be very specific with these tools?
Yes, I think that's the advice, rather than have one, would say, marketing agent try to do everything. Would say, you might have your CMO, your marketing agent, that has a series of sub agents that
Okay.
do a specific function. So, yes, that is the advice, to have a specific task, rather than have one agent try to do too much, because then it gives room for a bit of hallucination, or so. Yes, be very specific for each agent. We'll say one particular function, and with the proper instruction and the context. That's the advice at the moment. And this whole area, it's evolving very fast. Actually, I think that this, the agents, the area that's developing, that I think it's not quite there yet, is the orchestration of agents, the agents communicating together. So that is advancing. But right now, it's individual agents carrying out a certain task are really very effective. Like, I see agents within your organizational chart, as teammates that you would set up. We'll say a small business that might have a sales and marketing person. So within that organizational chart, they have uh, a number of teammates, or agents, let's call them agents, reporting to them. So they've been instructed. It's like, if a business was to take on a junior marketing person, um, they give them the instruction, they train them on how they do things within their organization. And so you wouldn't take on a teammate, or you wouldn't hire somebody and not brief them. So it's the same principle.
Right.
So it's that mindset shift of AI as the teammate, working with the human.
Now, all of this, and when we're talking about this, I know our focus here on this podcast is always around communications and marketing. There are agents that can do other jobs for us, but the barrier to entry here is, and we talked a bit earlier about the overwhelm, is what do I subscribe to and how do I keep like on top of all of these subscriptions? So what's your advice in it? Because my take would be, okay, invest in one tool and figure out what it can do for you before like you get to a point where you have subscriptions to 12 different platforms. So like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
risk here is that you can get very excited, a bit like a child in a sweet shop, and all of a sudden your bill is coming to hundreds a month for multiple different
yeah.
platforms.
Yeah, I know. And you see, I would think, don't think tool first.
Okay.
It is the first question I get asked. What tool do I need? Well, I don't know. What is your workflow? What's your pain point? So it really does come back to, no tools first. Map out your workforce. What do you need it to do? What is it that you have an issue with that you wanted to solve? So it's not tool first, and that's why I think of it differently. Think of it as a system. To be quite honest, all of the large learning models now, probably even if you had just use one of the large learning models, Claude is probably the most, I think, for marketing and communications, because of the kind of content it writes, and because of its setup. The Claude co-work within Claude is a user-friendly agent, for setting up agents. So I would say even work with just one large learning model and master it. It can do probably everything you would need as a business. And now we can connect to all of your other tools. We'll say if you have a CRM, so you think of the problem first and what you want to solve, not the other way around, not tool first. Like I would see, small businesses will say they probably have a number of different tools at the moment. They'd have maybe your CRM, they might have Canva, they'd have a note taker, they might have 5 or 6 different tools, and none of them are talking together.
Yes.
What I would do first with a business like that is actually do an audit on, first of all, their processes and their systems, that they understand what it is they're doing. Most of that kind of information is in people's heads. And if it's only in your head, you can't instruct an AI. So you really have to document that first. That's the first and foremost, the most important thing to do, to map out. I think businesses should take time out and dedicate time to this, and they map out what. So before they know what they want the AI to do, they need to know how we're doing things at the moment. Map out every process, and where now can AI help us? And then we would do an audit of all of their tools. Normally, and the way it means that they're probably top heavy on tools. There's probably too many. It generally, with AI, you're connecting, using tools maybe they're using on, and they might continue to use the same CRM, but it's connecting. I've generally find that they end up using less, because they connect the systems that they have, and they end up using probably less tools.
Yeah, to invest a bit of time to begin with, and that would be the big expense, but actually save money in the long run by being more efficient, but by cutting down on those subscriptions.
Exactly, yeah. And I think you'll find that, with the large learning models, like Claude can do everything really, and it's getting more and more features and functionality that any small business would need. If they're already using ChatGPT, again, they now have agents as a feature. They also have, like, I would say that their new image feature in ChatGPT is probably the best, so you can use the agents, the image too. I mean, it's incredible how the whole image creation and video creation has evolved. I didn't pay too much attention to that area, because I didn't think it was quite good enough, for the AI generated images. Now, actually, it's excellent. It's usable for businesses. So there are features, but then they're all improving at the same time. So Claude might come out with another feature next week that's better, or Google Gemini, Notebook LM, fabulous tools. But again, don't get bogged down with the tools. use one large learning model and master it. It has enough functionality for any small business, features
And
you
actually,
know, but
and look,
yeah.
we're not sponsored by Claude or anything like that here in this podcast, but there is a benefit with Claude in that you've got the Claude Academy where you can really easily access the tutorials. Whereas I found, at least, Roisin, sometimes the tutorials on the other platforms, they might not just be as easy to locate, whereas it's a little bit more blatantly obvious as to where you can find them within Claude. Well, Roisin Bennett of the AI team, thank you so much for joining us on Cut Through the Noise today. If listeners have enjoyed hearing from you, where can they find out more about you and your work?
I'm on LinkedIn most days, and I generally share a lot of updates and for small to medium businesses, that's practical and relatable. So LinkedIn, I'm up there under Roisin Bennett Marketing Mentors. Follow along there, DM me, connect with me. The new website is due to launch this week. So it's the AI team, and there's also a lot of resources on there. We're also planning a series of workshops, Ashton, for the next number of months. Again, very practical, hands-on. How do you implement it? We have all the theory, we have all the information, but how do you actually implement it, and how does it relate to my small business?
Well, Roisin Bennett, thank you so much for your time today.
You're very welcome. Lovely to be here. Thanks, Ashling.
My key takeaway from my chat with Roisin today is really about establishing some AI agents and getting really specific about it. And I do think that is the most important thing when we're using AI. If we prompt it or establish agents without context, without specific boundaries and ground rules, we are going to generate more AI slop, as the internet has decided to call it. We need to get really specific in what problems we're trying to solve. And then if we're going to start creating agents, give that agent a specific role. Think of it momentarily, at least, like a member of your team, an employee. And what role would you give that person if you had the budget to hire them? And I know that can sound frightening, like you're replacing somebody's job, but this is a task that perhaps wouldn't ordinarily be carried out because you might not have the budget to hire the person. Get really specific and give it the task of content creation. Then another agent might look at data analytics, research. As Roisin said, you might have 4 members of your marketing team all tackling separate tasks. And that way, eventually we'll be able to get these agents to work together. We're not there just yet, as Roisin pointed out. But that way we can get real quality assistance from our agents through whatever AI platform you choose to pay for and buy into. Well, that's all we have time for on this week's episode of Cut Through the Noise. I do hope that you enjoyed the conversation and found the episode useful. And if you did, please do remember to share it with a colleague, a fellow business founder, or even a member of the family. This episode is designed, and this series is designed to help you think differently about AI and how you are using it as part of your communications strategy. And if you're ready to work and do that work in a supported and structured environment, book a discovery call with me today to explore how the Clarity Collective might help you. You can email me on hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie or visit thecommunicationscoach.ie. As always, all the links are in the show notes below. Remember, we are living in a noisy world, and clear, confident and authentic communication is what allows you and your business to stand out from the crowd and cut through the noise. Have a great week.